And now for our speaker of the evening.
Okay, have I done this right? Okay. Well, I don't know about following that. That's pretty impressive. Fortunately, this breaks down fairly nicely into two parts. So I don't know how anxious y'all are to leave, but I can pretty well jettison the second part because I wasn't real wild about it anyway. So maybe it'll appear as an article sometime. That's fine. Yeah, I was a little bit anxious about presenting myself tonight for the banquet speech anyway, but after following that incredible bit with Frank, it's even more. My sole qualification for being up here is that I collaborate with John Thorne on Wrapped in Plastic, a bi-monthly magazine about the work of David Lynch in general and Twin Peaks in particular. I certainly claim no extraordinary insight into either the show itself or the phenomenon of continued interest the show has generated. So what seems amazing most to me is this festival is even taking place at all. I'm not because of anything in and of itself, but for the whole idea of a series that lasted less than a season and a half, generating this kind of continued interest, however good the series is. John and I both live in the vicinity of Dallas, Texas, and John and his wife did the smart thing and flew up here. I drove. And part of that was actually enjoy driving. I get a kick out of just getting out on the highway. But I also wanted to see the northwest part of the country up close, because closer than an airplane window would allow. So despite the extra time it took, I'm glad I drove, and let me tell you why. I got to see lots of mountains up close. See, in Texas, we don't have mountains. We've heard about mountains, and we've seen pictures of mountains, and we've talked to friends who claim to have seen mountains. But you know how friends can be sometimes. So I just wanted to see them just to see them, you know. And what I didn't expect was for my appreciation of Twin Peaks to increase at the same time. When I saw the mountain range outside of Denver, I was astonished at just how huge they were compared with the city below. And it wasn't until I got to Utah that I was profoundly struck by their immense power and their colossal volume. I was in awe. I could barely keep my eyes on the road. It was pretty dangerous. I put in some Twin Peaks soundtracks in the tape deck, although I can tell you that Vangelis works equally as well, particularly his soundtracks to The Bounty or Blade Runner. And whipping around these towering cliffs at about 75 miles an hour with Badalamenti and Vangelis blaring out of the speakers is a pretty heady experience. I'm envious of those of you who live in this part of the country, getting to see this stuff. And what made me wonder was, those of you who do live here, does the incredible beauty of the mountains just melt into the background, becoming part of the wallpaper of our lives, of your lives, or do you become so accustomed to them that you don't even notice them anymore? Or every time you see them, does some fleeting thought rise up and remind you of just how incredible they are? because I think David Lynch didn't forget. I suppose most of you knew that he grew up here in the Northwest before going off to Europe and Philadelphia and Los Angeles and wherever else. And just as Bill Watterson never forgot what it was like to be a kid and thus was able to create the great comic strip Calvin and Hobbes, I don't think David Lynch ever forgot the beauty of the mountains and the trees and the wind and the water and used all those elements in creating Twin Peaks. One other thing, on Tuesday night, when I was still kind of reeling from the emotional effects of the mountains and the effects that it had on me, dusk was fast approaching, and also approaching was one of these local storms that I kept driving through all day that would last a couple of minutes and then they'd be gone. I kept hitting them and again and again. And the darker it got, the more I realized that this wasn't just another one of those small local storms. It was this huge, massive storm, and it covered like a 45-degree angle as I was driving, and it took up the whole scope of the front windshield. It covered virtually the entire sky in front of me, and while the rain wasn't that intense, the lightning was, and thick bolts of lightning flashed in the sky for brief instants. And sometimes several would occur simultaneously, lighting up most of the sky, and once, incredibly, the entire sky lit up. And I was impressed with, just as I was impressed earlier with nature's incredible beauty, I had suddenly come upon nature's incredible power and all of man's accomplishments. For all of those, he can't come close to equaling the power of nature. And it's always dubious to assign personalities to impersonal realities, but if I were forced to, this massive display of lightning and storm clouds could only be considered malevolent. There was no possible good that could come from it, and certainly quite a bit of danger and possible injury. And so I'm not calling the storm evil or something like that. Its effect on me was similar. And this, too, I believe that David Lynch remembered when he was creating Twin Peaks with Mark Frost. Nature's beauty and nature's dangerous power. And after seeing those, I'll never view Twin Peaks the same way again. Thank you, and thanks to Pat Shook.